Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today I thought it would be good to take a look at some more early Pokemon card 151 decks and kind of look at where the meta is going to go with the new 151 decks. It has been a while since I have posted looking at deck lists, so I decided why not do it again and get into it. 151 is like less than a month away now almost, so, or even it actually is just less than a month away, so it's coming out very soon. I know we just had Obsidian Flames, but of course they are releasing this another set here, which is nice because the next set after this is in November, so we do have, you know, a bit of a break between main sets, but we do get 151, which does have a good amount of cards in it, to be fair. It's actually a pretty solid set. So I want to take a look at some more new decks to come out of 151 and take a look at them and how they are going to impact the meta. Because now we know what the meta is like with Charizard being really, really good to come out of Obsidian Flames. Before you get the video, make sure to leave a like in the video. If you're new to the channel, subscribe down below. We just hit 7,000 subscribers, so thank you all for 7K once again. And let's get into the lists. So I have pulled up Cerebi here to help look for certain cards to read off what they do, because I'm sure as we look through some decks, y'all aren't going to know what certain cards from 151 do. So I thought I'd pulled up Cerebi again to help kind of analyze them. Now I wanted to start things off here with Charizard EX. Now Charizard EX we know is our arguable best deck to come out of Obsidian Flames. It's doing the most well in online tourneys, but we have seen a resurgence in grass Pokemon now that Charizard has become pretty popular. We've seen Leafeon V-Star, we've seen Superior V-Star, we've seen Leafeon V-Max, we've seen all these grass decks start to do well again, and that's all because of the popularity of Charizard EX's weakness to grass. The problem is, now Charizard is going to have a Fire Charizard to play when 151 comes out, and that's going to change the course of the deck completely. So this new Pokemon card 151 Charizard EX is playable with the Charizard we already have in the format, and obviously with Charizard EX's ability to accelerate Fire Energy to other Pokemon, you can use that to accelerate energy to a Charizard EX here. It's got 330 HP, so the exact same amount of HP as the Obsidian Flames Charizard, and it does have two attacks. The first attack, Resolute Wings, does 60 damage, and if it has any damage counters on it, you do 100 more damage. Now, the main attack you're probably going to prioritize is Detonating Vortex. That does a whopping 330 damage. Now, this card, it completely changes the grass-type meta, because now there's a Pokemon that can one-hit KO grass Pokemon, either if you can use Resolute Wings, or if you want to go for a little bit of an overkill strategy with Detonating Vortex. The other big thing about Charizard is you notice that it does 330 damage here. That means that Charizard can one-hit KO Charizards in the mirror match, which is insane. Now, there is obviously an issue with playing the 151 Charizard, and that is going to be you need to get 4 energy on it to do the main attack, and of course you have to discard 3 of the energy. So while the attack definitely serves a purpose, it is a bit of a hindrance sometimes because you have to get rid of so many energies, and while you do have the energy acceleration with Charizard EX, you're not able to do it a million times over. You can only do it when you evolve the Charizard. So it's a bit of a scarce attacker, and that's why the lists are only playing one of them. But I did want to point out how good the 151 Charizard is going to be within Charizard, because Charizard needs this big, fire attacker. And obviously, Radiant Charizard, Entei, Delphox have all seen play, but I really think that the 151 Charizard is really going to help. It's also, again, good in the mirror, because now you have a way to one-hit KO other Charizard EXs, because that one does 330 damage. Now, take a look here, too. We do have a list playing Mew in the deck. The new Mew EX is another really good card. Arguably, I think a lot of people actually might make the argument that Mew is going to be the best card out of Pokemon 151. We'll get into that, in another video, obviously, down the road. But Mew is definitely really good. Let's go find Mew. Mew is a phenomenal card. Again, might be one of the better cards in the set. It does have the ability to restart, where you can draw cards until you have 3 in your hand. The main selling point of it, though, is the attack genome hat, which thankfully requires no energy cost, so you can use it in any deck. Any deck that can accelerate energies, at the very least, can play a Mew. And Mew's attack allows you to choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as its attack. This has very good benefits. Obviously, it's good in a beret of matchups. It's good against Charizard mirror matches, potentially. It's actually good against other big, heavy-hitting attacks like Giratina V-Star, for example. So Mew is a phenomenal card, and because it requires 3 colorless energy, it's pretty splashable within Charizard EX, right? So it's a pretty good card to play. So Charizard EX does get a big boost with the new Charizard EX and the new Mew EX. I think both these two cards are really good within Charizard and will both see some play. I think both of them serve really good purposes, and I think both Charizard EX and Mew EX are going to be splashed within Charizard, making Charizard even stronger. We'll have to see where the grass meta goes once we do get these 2 new Pokemon. It'll be very, very interesting to see where the grass meta goes. But I did want to also look at Blastoise list. Now, Blastoise, and you can see it's just as recent as August 16th, so like not that long ago, we can see some Blastoise EX decks here. Now, Blastoise EX is another decent card. It is arguably the second best starter behind, the new Charizard, or some people might even argue it is the best starter. So it does have the ability Solid Shell, where this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks, which is nice. It already has 330 HP. So off the bat, Charizard or Blastoise might just be the tankiest EX Pokemon we've seen yet. I mean, Tyranitar and Skeledirge both have 340 HP. Blastoise has, without Pat the Peak in play, effectively 360 HP if you want to count that minus 30 damage as extra health. And then, of course, you'd have Twin Cannons, which for 2 waters does 140 damage, and then you discard up the 2 basic water energy from your hand, and this deck does 140 damage for each card discarded in this way. So Blastoise is a pretty straightforward card. Now, obviously, we're seeing it here within Palkia V-Star, where it can do 280 damage, and you can use stuff like Star Portal to power up your Blastoise. And then, of course, Palkia is also just a really strong attacker. We know Palkia is pretty good right now in the format as it's doing well, even at Worlds. You can see the 2 different builds here. One of them using Pidgeot as an engine, and then one using Bibarel as an engine. So both of which are pretty decent. But we all see they're just kind of like Blastoise with Palkia. We don't really see too much else going on within the deck in terms of extra accelerators. We have seen a few like Blastoise Excalibur decks before, but a lot of them now, you can just see they're all just Blastoise Palkia decks here. Even going back into July, all of them are just really Blastoise Palkia. Some spicy stuff we are seeing like Candace, Eldegoss as a way to find energy. And there we see a Baxcalibur build here being able to accelerate energy to Blastoise. It's arguable whether or not Blastoise Baxcalibur will be good when you already have Xianpao, but we'll have to see, because it looks like either Blastoise Palkia is going to be the way to play Blastoise, because it's the majority of the new deck list here all just Blastoise Palkia, or if Blastoise Baxcalibur will pick up any steam. But now to take a look at some of the extra decks here from 151. So we start things off with an interesting Arbok EX deck. Now, Arbok EX is another really interesting card to come out of Pokemon 151. I think Arbok is a card that I think a lot of people are really excited for. So let's go find Arbok real quick. It's going to be near the top. There it is. So yeah, Arbok EX is a pretty strong card. So it's got the attack Bind that does 70 damage, and then the defending Pokemon can retreat. And then, of course, the main attack, Menacing Fangs. Your opponent chooses 2 and discards 2 cards from their hand. So they choose 2 cards and they discard the 2 cards. And that's pretty powerful. Again, being able to force your opponent to lose cards from your hand is obviously very, very strong. Being a dark type is good, obviously, with the popularity of Mew and Gardevoir, even though Mew is kind of dropped off a little bit because of how popular Charizard EX is, which is funny because when we got Arbok revealed, we're all like, oh, this might be, a really good way to beat Guardian Mew, and then Charizard EX comes out and kind of was like, well, not really. But yeah, Arbok is essentially just here to get rid of cards from your opponent's hand. Now, this is an interesting deck list. It's actually playing Greedent and Eradicate, Klefki, and Hawlucha Alakazam. So I guess the idea behind this deck is that you're just trying to be super annoying and anti-meta to Lost Box. I mean, VMAXs and tag teams or tag teams EXs. I don't know why I said tag teams. We're not in that era anymore. Eradicate, of course, does have the ability to put your opponent's active HP down to 10, and then you can knock them out with, I guess, the Greedent afterwards. That's, I guess, the idea behind that against, basic EXs. I'm not sure why there's an Arbok in the deck then. I guess it's just here to counter Lost Box, because a deck like this, well, you already have the Greedent, though, to be Lost Box. So, yeah, I'm not too sure. This is an interesting list. I'm not sure what the Arbok is kind of in the deck for. I guess Gardevoir, but even then, again, you have Greedent and you have Alakazam, Hawlucha, and Eradicate, which are probably good against Guardy. So I'm not too sure what the Arbok's really doing in here, but it is an interesting concept nonetheless. And we see a Noivern Bayonet EX deck here. That's something you could play right now. Same with the Superior deck. And, we got Empoleon. But we do see this Zorobox Crobat Eradicate deck. Now, this is an interesting deck because we do see this brand new Ditto. Now, the new Ditto is another really good card within Obsidian Flames. And Ditto itself is probably going to see play, which is what makes it so good. So the new Ditto here is pretty strong. It only has an ability, and then in one attack, of course, it does a whopping 10 damage. But we all care about Ditto's ability. So its ability, you may use the ability once during your first turn. If this Pokemon is in the active spot, choose a basic Pokemon except for Ditto from a deck, discard this Pokemon all cards attached to it, and put the Pokemon you chose in its place. So very strong ability. Obviously, you're able to, essentially have a 5th basic out a lot of the time. Now, you can only use it going first, obviously, so it's only a one-time thing. But the ability is really strong nonetheless, because you are able to do some pretty cool plays with Ditto. And then in a deck where you get extra basics, it's pretty good. And then, of course, the new Chansey is pretty sick, too. That's another card we got to take a look at here. So yeah, the new Chansey's also pretty good with its ability Lucky Bonus. If you to this Pokemon as a face down prize card during your turn, and your bench is not full, you can put it on your bench, and then if you put it onto your bench, you can flip a coin of heads, take a prize. So if you just have 4 bench spots open when you take a prize and you happen to get Chansey, of course you have the ability to maybe put it onto your bench, which is really, really strong. And in a deck like this, where you're just trying to make some cheesy plays with Crobat, which takes an extra prize for knocking a Pokemon out, and then Raticate, which puts him down low, and even Radiant Jirachi to a degree, which has the ability to maybe knock something out, Chansey can be very good to put on your bench. So kind of a cheesy little countery fun deck here that can try to take like multiple, like 4 or 3 prizes in a single turn. It's a really cool concept. We've looked at, the Archeops build. This is an Archeops Omastar deck, though. So this is very much not a Lugia deck. But Mew EX is a fantastic card within Lugia because it does allow you to have access to a colorless energy psychic attacker, and it copies any attack on the active. So not only can it be good in, certain matchups where you want to hit for weakness, but it also is just a very good attacker within Lugia. We see Golem EX here. Now, Golem EX is another interesting EX card here. We can scroll up to find it. Golem EX does, of course, have 2 different attacks, and is a fighting Pokemon, which is good against Arceus, obviously, and even Miraidon to a degree. It's got the attack dynamic rollout for 1 energy, does 50 damage, and then during your next turn, this Pokemon's attacks will deal 120 more damage. So as long as Golem isn't, like, escape roped or bossed, or whatever happens on that regard, then you can then do a Boulder Blaster, which can do 180 and then plus 120 more damage if you already did dynamic rollout. So in order to make Golem work, you do have to kind of keep it alive for a turn, but there is some bulky cards you can play. Of course, we do have Lake Acuity in the deck and Rock Chestplate, which does give Golem a lot more HP to work with. Koraidon can be a decent way to move Golem out. We already have cards like Cheryl, which you can use to heal Golem, and there's obviously Double Turbo Energy, which can help provide Golem's attack cost. So Golem could be a fun little rogue deck to come out of a 151, and I'm excited to see if Golem ends up seeing some play, because it is a pretty cool card in 151. We see a Blaziken Zero Aura deck. We see an interesting Tinkaton deck here, actually utilizing Snorlax. Now, this is an interesting concept. Now, the new Snorlax does have a pretty good ability when combined with the card Leftovers. So, let's see if we can find Snorlax here. So, Snorlax states, once your turn, before you attack, you may put up the 2 leftover cards from your discard pile into your hand. So the idea behind this deck is that you can use Snorlax's ability to put 2 extra cards in your hand with the leftovers, and that provides extra damage for Tinkaton EX, where you're able to do 30 plus 30 more damage for each card in your hand. So really cool concept here with the Snorlax, being able to get leftovers from a discard pile back in your hand. You do have to discard leftovers, but leftover definitely isn't like the worst card ever. It is a tool card. We can actually, I guess, quickly read what leftovers does here real quick. Leftovers, where's it at? Yeah, we can quickly read what Leftovers does. It's actually pretty playable. At the end of your turn, if the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot, heal 20 damage from that Pokemon. So, interesting card, obviously. It plays like Leftovers from the video game where you're healing your active Pokemon. It is an interesting concept, nonetheless. We do see Wigglytuff EX. Now, Wigglytuff EX, once again, is another interesting deck to come out of 151. Wigglytuff has the ability where if you have a special energy on it, it gets plus 100 HP, and it can have up to 350 HP when it has a special energy on it. Now, of course, its ability will get shut off by Path, but it is a pretty strong ability, and we already have the Balloon Therapy Wigglytuff in the format to accelerate energy to Snorlax, and then Wigglytuff too. And I did want to take a look maybe at the new tool card while we're at it, the Extra Tight Belt. The Stage 1 evolution, this card statue, takes 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. So Extra Tight Belt really does give Wigglytuff a lot of bulk because of its ability. As long as you're not, your opponent does not put a Path in play, that ability is going to be really, really strong when combined with that Extra Tight Belt. So really interesting concept. You also have V-Guard energy on top of that to really give yourself a tanky Wigglytuff. So that's definitely an interesting, kind of deck to see unfold. We see a Rotom V-Star deck with Electrode. We've looked at this too, where the Electrode, of course, does more damage for each tool in your discard. And then, of course, you have Snorlax to help get the tools out. And then we have the Turbo Pikachu Union deck. Now, this deck does get that upgrade with Mew. Now, Mew doesn't really add too much to the deck in terms of, like, attack power, but it's mainly just here for the ability where you can drop to 3 cards, and that's really, really good when you do that in combination with the Pikachu of the Union. You can still attack with Mew if you're ever able to build it up, of course, slowly, or if you want to play, like, EXP Share to build it up. But overall, Mew's a bit more slower to build up. There's that one of Energy Patch card, which we can take a look at, too, real quick. the energy sticker card. Flip a coin if heads, attach one basic energy from a discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. So you can maybe use this to power one of your Mews. Definitely an interesting card to play with in this deck. And that's another card that maybe could see play with Mew is that extra, that energy sticker card. Being able to get extra energy on Mew could be good as it doesn't require energy. We see a Dragonite deck here using this brand new Dragonite. Now, we, of course, did try to make Dragonite EX work recently on the main channel, but the new Dragonite does have the ability Jet Cruise, where your Pokemon in play have no retreat, and then its main attack Dragon Pulse just does a nice clean and 180 damage, though you have to discard the top 2 cards of your deck. So the idea here is Dragonite EX does, of course, do that attack where you flip a coin. If heads, you're going to do 280, and if tails, you do 140, and then it can't attack. But if you can't attack, you already have the other Dragonite in play to give your Dragonite EX the free retreat pivot. So there is some natural synergy between the two, and that's one thing I do like about the Dragonite engine here. I've considered doing like Lost Zone Dragonite before when I was building, a Dragonite EX deck for the main channel, but I was like, eh. But maybe when we get the new Dragonite, it'll be worth it. We even see a brand new Decidueye EX deck here utilizing the brand new Mew EX within the deck. So again, it can be used as an attacker, but you can also use it as, for the ability. And the deck also plays the Weavile, which I think if Weavile's in the active spot, you get like a built-in mini repel effect, which is kind of cool. And we see the Altaria. So it's kind of like the Decidueye deck we did a video on where you do utilize the Altaria. It's not playing Pidgeot, though. This deck does not play any Pidgeot in it for the extra search. It just is like Altaria with the Mew and the Weavile and the Decidueye. We see the Magnezone Miraidon deck. Not playing any other, the new Magnezone we got in Obsidian Flames, just playing Magnezone EX. We see a Venomoth in Torterra. Now, Venomoth we can quickly read off too. So Venomoth is another interesting card in Obsidian Flames. It does have a really annoying attack here, of course. Venomoth has Disorder Powder, where, of course, your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused, and then your opponent cannot play any item cards. So an item lock attack and confusing. That's actually pretty good. Confusing is also obviously good because it makes it so the opponent maybe can't attack, and if they want to switch out of confusion, they can't because Venomoth item locked. So could be a really cool, annoying attacker to play within Torterra. Maybe it can be a way to kind of slowly build up your board while you're just kind of hitting them away with Venomoth while you're kind of slowly working towards getting Torterra into play, which I do quite like. Now, this is the wackiest deck we've seen yet. We see a V-Union Toolbox deck. Now, this deck is very crazy. It does play Morpeko, Pikachu, Greninja, Mewtwo. Wow. No love to Zacian? Wow, yeah. The Zacian shade is real, bro. What the heck? But nah, jokes aside, definitely an interesting concept here. Again, using the Mew EX in the deck, potentially, as the ability is really good to help draw pieces. Squawkabilly and Adventure Discovery, obviously really good with V-Unions. I definitely want to give the Arceus V-Union box deck a try. It's been a while since I did a video on this type of deck, so maybe it's something we look forward in the future. We see a Lost Zone Kangaskhan deck. Now, Kangaskhan we have looked at before, too. Kangaskhan is nothing too crazy, if I remember correctly. Let's see if we can find where Kangaskhan EX is here. It should be around here, I think. Yeah, there it is. So yeah, it's got the attack Gatling Punch, which does 4 flippable coins. Attack does 100 damage for each hit. So Gatling Punch, whatever you want to call it, can potentially do 400 damage. Could be good within Lugia V-Star. That's kind of the main deck we saw, but I guess people are going to play within Lost Box. Could be more of a meme, obviously. We see more Tinkaton action. We see Greninja EX. Now, we didn't get Greninja EX. Funny enough, we got Froakie and Frogadier in Obsidian Flames, so we did not get Greninja. I think Greninja is going to be coming out in like a promo battle deck or something, if I remember correctly. But the new Starmie is a cool addition to the deck. So it's got the ability Fishy Star. Once your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, and if you place any damage counters with the ability, discard this Pokemon and all cards attached to it. So the idea behind Starmie is it's like a kind of a mini version of quick shooting where you're able to put 2 damage on them. You don't have to get rid of the Starmie, but it is nice because it does have 90 HP. You can maybe play with something like Rescue Carrier, as you see in the deck here. We see an Arceus V-Star Grass deck. So this is a pretty decent anti-Charizard V-Star deck. It does play some interesting cards. It actually plays Water Energy within the deck alongside Grass Energy and Wotian. Now, the deck doesn't play any Poppy, which is interesting. I feel like this type of deck would need to play Poppy, but the idea behind the deck is basically you use Arceus to power up your Superior V-Star. Superior V-Star has the attack that can move energy around the board. So what you basically do within this deck is you put a bunch of energy on a Superior and then use Superior's attack, and then you move all the energy around your board. So you can build up your Wotian, you can build up a Mew, you can also build up Radiant Greninja with Superior. And that's the idea behind playing Superior within this deck. It's a really cool idea. Superior, Arceus, Wotian. Definitely something I might have to give a try too. It's a really cool deck concept. This is a really creative concept, and I quite like it. And it's really kind of thinking outside the box when attacking with Superior's attack, where you can move all the energy off Superior to your Pokemon on your bench. Really creative deck idea there. We see an interesting Luminous Energy box deck, which also could be good when you have access to the Mew EX. Obviously, it's another attacker that can be played in the deck with a really good attack. We see more Turbo Pikachu Union. We see a Vulpix Lost Box deck here. Then we see the Gengar deck that did well in the late night tourney. But yet another Greninja EX deck. Again, we don't have Greninja EX yet. I think it's coming out after 151. We see a Jinx EX deck. And this is something I did want to look at, too, is the Jinx EX deck here. So we can quickly go find where Jinx EX is here real quick. Because the Jinx EX is interesting, and this Jinx EX deck is definitely an interesting deck. It's also playing the Hypno in the deck, so another card we got to take a look at here. So, yeah, Jinx's main trait is the attack Kiss Goodbye. If your opponent's active Pokemon is asleep, it is knocked out. So if they're asleep, they just flat out get KO'd. And that's really strong. Obviously, Jinx's attack is pretty annoying if you're putting them to sleep. And the question will be then, how are you going to put your opponent to sleep to use Kiss Goodbye? Because Kiss Goodbye, thankfully, requires a water and a double turbo, so it's pretty easy to build up. Well, there is a Hypno in the new set that we can play with the Jinx. So natural synergy there with Hypno with the ability Surprise Hypnosis. Once you're in turn, when you place Pokemon from your hand to evolve on your Pokemon, you may use the ability, and your opponent's active Pokemon is asleep. So you just have to evolve Hypno to force your opponent's active Pokemon to fall asleep. And that's really, really strong. Obviously, you're able to force your opponent's active to sleep. That can be very good with Jinx, because then you immediately combine that with Jinx's attack. And obviously, this deck does play 3-2 Hypno, so you don't get, like, insane value out of Hypno. And Scuba Net rotating probably did Hypno a massive disservice. We still had Scuba Net within the format. Hypno Jinx would be a pretty solid deck, because you could reuse Hypno over and over again. You can't do that. You only get 2 opportunities to use Hypno. There is obviously the Super Rod, so technically if like a Hypno gets knocked out, you can just Super Rod it back, but you only really get the couple use out of Hypno due to Scuba Net rotating, which does kind of suck, but it does combine well with Jinx. And then you still have Palkia for your backup attack, and even Jinx's other attack isn't like the worst thing ever. A lot more Tinkaton. A lot of people really like their Tinkaton over in Japan. We see Kaparaja here, another deck that's interesting. We see the Sea King deck. We might have already looked at some of these decks. I think we might already have. Yeah, we might have looked at most of these decks already. I don't want to go too far back, because, again, we have already done a video where we looked at these decks, but I wanted to look at an updated version of these decks. And the main takeaway we can take here is that 151 does look like it actually will be an impactful set, of course, with the addition of a couple good new EX cards, like Arbok EX being a pretty impactful one. We already looked at a ton of Arbok decks earlier, but we do have the new Charizard EX, which is obviously going to be a big factor in Charizard EX right now, because Charizard EX is pretty susceptible to all the grass decks. People are playing all the grass tech cards. People are playing in their decks too, but when we get the new 151 Charizard, it does add a new dynamic to the Charizard deck, because then it also improves the mirror match, of course, because now you have a very strong fire type one-hit KO option within the mirror match, and that could be pretty good. But that's the main takeaway we want to get from the Pokemon card 151 decks and where it's looking at over in Japan. And we see Blastoise Palkia seems to be the ideal way to play Blastoise, and of course we did look at some pretty cool lists here from Japan. Utilize some new cards like the Chansey, the Ditto, Mew EX obviously being the big banner card from Pokemon 151. I think Mew EX is going to see a lot of play when it does come out in our new set. But yeah, that'll be for me on today's video here on the second channel, looking at some more Pokemon card 151 decks. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. And once again, if you're new to the channel, subscribe down below. Help me on the road to reaching 8K subscribers here on the second channel, as always. And let me know what you think of the decks down below in the comments. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on these Pokemon card 151 decks. And that'll be for me. Have a good day. Bye-bye.